Ooh. I'm mute, aren't I? I wasn't. You couldn't hear me. So sorry about that. Let's start over. Hello, loves. Welcome to the live stream. My name is Cassandra Joy, and we are about to solve a 20-year-old cold case. Specifically, thank you, Carrie. Yes, I know. You couldn't hear me. I was muted. I did that a couple live streams ago. It's the one thing I seem to forget to do. Let's start over. We're going through the book Murder in the Family by Cara Hunter. Now, this book is actually really unique. It's written and formatted in a very unique way. It's written like a documentary. It follows a fictional TV crew that's trying to solve a 20-year-old murder that was never solved. And it's our job to figure out who done it. So, if you happen to have the book handy, you're welcome to follow along. If you don't, that's okay. I will be showing you as much information as I can on my Kindle. This actually provides documents, pictures, blueprints. Let me show you. Oh, I forgot. I have something new for the live stream. Ta-da! I have this cool Murder Mystery Monday overlay that I just made today. I spent far too much time on it, but I just felt like it encapsulated what we're doing. So hopefully you guys like it. And then on the web browser, I added a little banner, like a border around my picture. Anyway, it's just the little things that make me happy. So yes, take two, Carrie. So sorry, everybody. All right, let's start over. Here's a little description about the book. It's a shocking thriller about a cold case, a fictional true crime series, and the family caught in the middle. 6 episodes, 1 killer. It was a case that gripped the nation. In December 2003, Luke Ryder, the stepfather of acclaimed filmmaker Guy Howard, then aged 10, was found dead in the garden of their suburban family home. Luke Ryder's murder has never been solved. Everyone present around the time of the murder swears they saw nothing. Despite a high-profile police investigation and endless media attention, no suspect was ever charged. But some murder cases are simply too big to forget. Now comes the sensational new Netflix series, Infamous, dedicated to investigating and perhaps cracking this famous cold case. The production team will re-examine testimony, re-interview witnesses, and once again, scour the evidence. This family will speak. The key players will be reunited on camera. The truth will come out. Are you ready to see it? So what we know so far, for anybody who's just tuning in and hasn't watched the previous episodes, we've got our victim, Luke Ryder. He sustained a head injury, which, let me see if I can zoom in a bit. We have the documentation here of where his wounds were. There were no signs of a break-in. So the perp knew the entrance code to the gate of the house. There were also no security cameras. And there was 40 minutes between when the victim was last seen and first found. So, let me see. Where should I start us? I think I will start over here. So our key players, Guy Howard, he is actually the head honcho of this TV show. He was a child when the murder took place, and it was actually his stepdad who was murdered. So it's really close to home, this mystery. The hot tea, because every family has one, is that Andrew Howard was married to Amanda Granger. They had Rupert Howard. Andrew, I think Amanda Granger died under some mysterious circumstances. I think she, if I remember correctly, died in a car crash and was apparently drunk, but she wasn't a big drinker, which didn't make sense, but nobody really looked into it. So put that in a pin for later. Andrew then married Caroline Farrow. Now the hot tea is that Caroline was the au pair for the Howard family. So they got married in pretty short order after poor Amanda met her end. And these two had 3 children, Mara, Amelie, and Guy. And then after that, Andrew Howard died, again, under some interesting circumstances. I believe he had a heart attack, but as we all know, heart attacks can be faked. So just keep that also in a pin for later. Then Caroline met Luke Ryder. He was quite a lot younger than Caroline, but that didn't seem to bother Caroline, and it didn't seem to bother Luke. They got married and were seemingly happy. As far as the events of the day, oh yes, we have some suspects. We're gathering evidence as best we can. We've got Caroline Howard, who was the wife. She has no apparent motive. She likely didn't commit the crime for money or inheritance. Luke was going to inherit some money from his grandmother, but on the event of his death, he wouldn't have received anything. Or, well, Caroline wouldn't have received anything. So it wasn't like if she had murdered him, she would get anything. Oh, there was a party on the night of the murder. Because of course there was. And as Caroline left, Phyllis, who was the host of the party, noticed that her shoes had grass and mud on them, which was a little suspicious, but a lot of the guests took a smoking break during the party, and it was in the back garden, and it had been raining, so it's not as suspicious. I think that's a red herring, personally. We also have Rupert Howard. He is the oldest son. He is not Caroline's son. He has no apparent motive. He insists he wasn't in London at the time of the crime. But I feel like Rupert isn't telling us everything because Rupert was besties with Luke Ryder. He actually accidentally introduced Luke to Caroline. And the rest is history. I feel like Rupert is way too cool about this coupling. He felt like it was kind of weird. In his own words, he wasn't thrilled, but he didn't seem upset. And I don't know about you, but if my best friend decided to marry my father, I'd have some issues. You know what I mean? Before we go into Mara and the mystery caller, let me introduce you to our investigative team. We have Alan Canning. He's a retired senior police officer. These are all the people that we're following during the investigation. They all worked on the case originally and now are reopening the case to see if they can solve it for the TV show. We also have Mitchell Clark, freelance journalist. He was at the scene of the crime, but he was proven to be not guilty. That was the episode we read last time, if you'd like to catch up on that. We have Hugo Fraser. He is an attorney and apparently a very attractive one. He's what was it? Like, you know, the magazine, like, World's Sexiest Man? He basically has gotten that award 3 times running, but for attorneys. We also have Layla Furness. She is the only lady on our team here. She's a forensic and clinical psychologist. We also have J.J. Norton. He's a forensic investigator. I imagine him to be very bespectacled with acne scars. That's just my vision of him, but you imagine him how you want to. And we also have William R. Serafini. He is a private investigator from New York. So you get to hear my Boston accent, which I'm sure will please all of you. And then we have a timeline for the chain of events that happened on the day of the murder. Let me run that through for anybody who needs a little catch-up. At 8:35, Caroline leaves to drive Guy to school. Girls go on foot. This is when Guy was 10, by the way. 9 a.m., cleaner arrives. The cleaner's name is Beatriz Alves. 9:15, Caroline returns to the house. 9:46, phone call from dry cleaner. 11:15, Caroline leaves for lunch. 2 p.m., Alves leaves. 2:37, mysterious phone caller, lasted 2 minutes and 33 seconds, too long for a wrong number. This, we don't know who it is. They didn't track it, but they did track it to a payphone. They just couldn't figure out who made the call. 2:45, Caroline returns from lunch. 3:30, Caroline leaves to collect dry cleaning and pick up Guy from school. 4:15, Mara and Amelie return from school. So they were they went on foot to school and they came home on foot from school. 4:55, girls leave for party. 7 p.m., girls leave party. 7:15, girls have pizza back at the house. 8:15, Caroline took the girls to a movie in Notting Hill. I'm not sure what time this happened, but Caroline returns home. They had a party that they were going to go to, just a little drinks party, nothing super fancy, but it was pre-discussed that she and Luke were going to go. Surprisingly, after this mysterious phone call that nobody heard Luke take, he decides not to go. Which probably means that whoever killed him was the person on the phone and met him at the house later. Luke decides he's not going to go to the party, and that's a last-minute change. 9 p.m., Caroline leaves for drinks party. 9:30, Guy is sent to bed by Luke. Guy was supposed to be allowed to stay up until 10 to watch a special show, but somehow Luke made an excuse and put him to bed early, probably because he was going to meet someone. Caroline is seen speaking with Phyllis at the party at the same time. So we know she was at the party and not in the house. Which is good because it kind of takes her out of the running for being a suspect. 9:35 to 10:20 p.m. Murder occurred sometime in between there. 10:30, Mara and Amelie returned home from the movies. Driven there, but walked back. I thought that was a little odd. But it seems like, I'll show you a blueprint in a minute, it seems like a town is pretty walkable. England itself is a very walkable place. A lot of people don't drive, which I know in the U.S. is very foreign. So it makes me pause for a second, like, that's interesting, but I guess that was pretty normal. 10:52, Mara called Caroline at drinks party about the murder. So Mara's the one who found Luke, if I remember correctly. And then at 11:30, police arrive at the party to retrieve Caroline. Now, one of our viewers, Rosie, noticed that there was a 22-minute, I think it was 22 minutes delay between when the body was found and Mara calling Caroline to let her know that the murder happened, which is interesting. And then the last episode left off, the last thing we read was a text message between Mara and Amelie, the two sisters. And Mara basically said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of things just like I always do." Oh yeah, right here, I wrote it down. Waited 22 minutes after finding the body to call Caroline about the murder. So, we've got some interesting things afoot. Here's some blueprints of the town that they lived in. Also, some blueprints of the property, and then blueprints of the house. We haven't had to look at these too closely, but it's good to know they're there because I feel like they're going to come in handy later on. So, fancy, I know. Listen, I needed a clue board because there was no way I could keep all of this information in my head. It just wasn't going to happen. So, I feel like it also adds to the experience for all of you to have a visual to refer back to. And then it's nice because it's a collaborative opportunity where I'm reading the book out loud, so I'm absorbing the information at a delayed rate. You guys are able to think it through a bit more. I'm concentrating on whose accent I'm doing next and making sure not to mix them up. So it's really fun when you guys spot things that I don't, and then we add it to the clue board and be smarties. So, let's dive into episode 3. It took us two live streams to get through episode 1, but that was a bit chunky because it was giving us all of the information we needed to move forward. Last episode 2, wasn't too bad, so my goal is to get through episode 3. We'll take a break at the halfway mark around 7. Hi, Monica! Thank you so much. I decided to try it curly after getting my hair cut. I haven't worn it curly since, so I thought I'd give it a try. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. I feel like this is my true north, curly hair. But I always feel like when I straighten my hair, I'm putting on a different personality. But I do like it in that style, too. Anyway, we're going to take a break at the halfway point around 7, at whatever is a good stopping point. Let's dive in. First of all, we have a newspaper clipping. Oh, do you like the lighting, by the way? I changed some things. I'm going to decorate this wall eventually, but I added some ambiance. We've got a candle, we've got coffee, we've got a glowy Edison bulb. We've set the scene. The plot is thickening nicely. The new Infamous is far more than just a rehash of old material. By Ross Leslie. Infamous: Who Killed Luke Ryder? Showrunner. Red, White on Blue, the Chelsea FC story. True crime may be the genre du jour, and as regular readers will know, I am a self-confessed devotee, but it does have... Oh, it's a bit cut off. But it does have an Achilles heel. However detailed, insightful, and well-produced such shows are, all too many merely warm over the old remains of a cold case, adding nothing new or significant to the mix. One could argue that the mere act of bringing such long dormant cases back into the light of day can prompt new witnesses to come forward or new evidence to be discovered, and there have indeed been several high-profile examples, most notably the case of Adnan Syed following the worldwide success of the Serial podcast. Yet all too often, the gruesome details of someone else's pain are offered up simply for the purposes of entertainment. The ethical issues this raises are, of course, self-evident. But the same cannot be said of the new series of Infamous. Last night's episode closed with new evidence so genuinely jaw-dropping that one was left wondering how the Met failed to unearth it at the time. I will, needless to say, allow you to discover the exact nature of this revelation, but, safe to say, you will not be disappointed. This was posted on the 10th of October, 2023. And then we also have a chat room. Sorry, that's my chair creaking and squeaking. A bit like me. I'm a bit creaky and squeaky too. The camera's not picking it up, so I'll just read it to you. Oh, and we start off with a lovely word that I won't be saying out loud. I'll be replacing those. Oh, crap. What the heck? That was from... What's the username? I love reading the usernames, but this one doesn't have it. And we all thought the Mitch thing was a cliffhanger. This puts a bomb under the whole bloody case. And that's, Can I zoom in? I can. Bernice Bolt Cutter. See what you did there, Bern? By Brian, with a bunch of numbers. Bit crass, don't you think? In the Cirques, people died. That guy Serafini is either the luckiest investigator in the history of crime, or there's more than meets the eye. No way something like that just fell into his lap. Lucky, maybe. Insufferable, definitely. He's really starting to get on my nerves. Not as bad as that guy Rupert. What a self-important jerk. I'm omitting so many words right now. If it feels like my brain is buffering, that's why. I'm having to edit as I talk. And lying. Haven't heard so much crap under 5 minutes since the last Tory party political broadcasts. Figures. I definitely think that hit and run in Sydney could have something to do with it. Yet another thing the Met don't seem to have found. Don't get me started. That investigation had more holes than my granddad's old socks. I'm not so sure. I reckon conspiracy is way more likely than a mess-up on this one. All that old money, and the Met bigwigs are just looking after their own. That bloke Fraser seems to know a lot about Camden Hill, by the way. All that stuff about tennis and where the squash club is. # just saying. Maybe he's just into rackets? Rackets. More like he's a bloody KC. Back to square one if you ask me, on the investigation I mean. This changes everything. Episode 4. We've made it to episode 4, guys. Title sequence. Art house style black and white montage of images and short clips. Crime scene. Contemporary news coverage, family photos. Theme song, It's Alright Ma, I'm Only Bleedin' by Bob Dylan from the soundtrack to Easy Rider, 1969. Who Killed Luke Ryder? Fade out. Black frame, text appears with voiceover. Narrator, female. On the night of October 3rd, 2003, the brutally beaten body of a young man was found in the garden of his wife's London townhouse. For the past 20 years, everyone, including his family and law enforcement, thought the man's name was Luke Ryder. But thanks to our investigations, we've now proved conclusively that this was not his real name. Luke Ryder was a living lie. Fade out. Oh, that's right. Am I misremembering? I don't recall if he had a different name. You have to let me know. Cut to studio. Like I said, this is why I have a clue board, because it's impossible to remember everything. The team are sitting around the table. They're dressed differently from last time. Time has passed. Hugo Fraser, he's the really attractive lawyer, so I always try to give him sort of a smarmy voice. Well, I think we can all agree that was one heck of a revelation last time, Bill. Mitchell Clark. Yeah, you certainly kept that one under your hat. Bill Serafini, laughing. Sorry, guys. Alan Canning. So you're going to tell us who Luke Ryder actually was? Bill Serafini, turning to the board and starting to pen up mugshots. There were 5 Westerners on that bus that day, 3 of whom died. Those 5 people were the real Luke Ryder. A Brit called Joe McGrath, 2 Dutch girls called Famke Meyer, and Merit Rietzima, and our guy, tapping the first photo, an American, a man by the name of Eric Dwight Fulton, a native of North Birmingham, Alabama, born... Alabama! Monica! Monica's from Alabama. Born on the 11th, March 1966. It takes a moment for this to sink in. Layla Furness. But that would have made him at least 10 years older than the real Luke. Bill Serafini. 11, actually, but yes. J.J. Norton. Hang on, so you're saying the bloke who married Caroline Howard wasn't Luke Ryder at all, but someone 11 years older? Sits back. I'm amazed he could pull that off, and that no one around him ever suspected. Bill Serafini. You and me both, JJ. And I don't think the guy will mind me saying that he was just as stunned as the rest of us. Cut to Guy at Dorney Place. The chair is in the middle of the room. He's in shirt sleeves and jeans this time. Guy Howard. To be honest, I'm still trying to get my head around this. I had no idea, honestly. I know I was only a kid at the time, but children can be surprisingly good at sensing whether people aren't genuine. I never got that vibe off him. Not once. Cut to Mara, sitting on the same chair. She's now wearing a black long-sleeved t-shirt with a scoop neck. Her nails are painted black too. Guy Howard, off screen. You know I told you Luke wasn't who he said he was. Turns out he wasn't even Australian. He was from Alabama. Mara Howard, staring. Alabama? Seriously? What? Guy Howard, off screen. Did you ever suspect anything? Mara. Me? Of course not. Why would I? I was like 13 when Mum met him. How the heck would I know? He didn't sound American. Guy, with a quick laugh. At least it explains why he was so crap at cricket. But seriously, you don't remember Mum ever saying anything about his accent or anything like that? Or how old he looked, even as a joke? Mara, frowning. I'm not with you. Guy. It wasn't just that his name was fake, Mari. He was living on someone else's identity. Someone a whole lot younger than he was. When they first met, he wasn't 23 like he told Mum. He was 34. Mara, her eyes widening. You have got to be kidding me. 34? All the crap she went through about the age difference, and all the time they're basically the same age. Guy. Yup. Mara. But how did he get away with it? How did nobody even notice? Not us, not the kids, but the adults? Like bloody Rupert, for a start? Rupert was best friends with Luke Ryder, as a reminder to everybody. Cut to Rupert Howard, sitting in his study this time. He's in an open-necked shirt and a cable-knit cardigan. Rupert. You're saying that when I met him in ASOS, he was really 32? Trust me, there was no way on earth that guy, whatever his name was as old as that. No way. No way. There must have been some sort of mistake. Nick Vincent, producer, off-screen. It doesn't look like it. Rupert Howard. Oh, come on. He was behaving like a bloody student. Getting drunk, sleeping on other people's floors, generally making a joke of himself. Why would anyone in their 30s even want to go through all that again? I bloody wouldn't. Nick Vincent. He was living on someone else's passport. He didn't have a choice. Rupert. Yeah, but trust me, he was enjoying it. If what you say is true, this bloke wasn't just faking it. He was bloody certifiable. pause. Anybody else feel like Rupert had to have known something? He's acting all surprised here, but Rupert, I'm not saying he's my top suspect, but I feel like he has more than he's letting on. More information, that is. Cut to Diana Moran, subcaptioned consultant psychiatrist. She's pale-skinned, with dark shoulder-length hair and glasses that are slightly too heavy for her face. She's sitting in a low-lit settee in what is clearly a clinical environment. Muted color schemes, functional furniture, banal, inoffensive artwork. Camera pans back to show Guy sitting alongside her. Diana Moran. What we could be talking about here is a condition known as Peter Pan syndrome, but I need to stress that it's not a recognized mental disorder, though the term is fairly wide used in therapeutic circles. As the name suggests, people who exhibit this pattern of behavior basically don't want to grow up. It's a much more common phenomenon in men, and shows itself in adolescent characteristics, such as a refusal to take on responsibility, a reluctance to be tied down to specific plans or goals. Sorry, my chair is so loud. And the tendency to use drugs or alcohol as a means of escape. Such men are often hopeless with money and leave a string of bankruptcies in their wake, while blaming everyone but themselves for the fact that things have gone wrong. The flip side of all this is that they are often very charming. Their childishness can come over as playfulness and emotional accessibility, which women can find very attractive. A breath of fresh air, you could say. Until, that is, it becomes obvious that these appealing qualities are almost always accompanied by an inability to commit in the long term. Like children, these men are very easily bored. What do we think? Do you think he might have been on the sly with someone else behind Caroline's back? We do know that Caroline had a someone because one of the daughters came home from school unexpectedly, I think for lunch or something, and heard some things. So we already know Caroline wasn't true, but we haven't had any proof that Luke wasn't true to their marriage. Just putting it out there. Guy Howard, is this something you're born with, or is it the result of your upbringing, or some sort of trauma, or what? Diana, as I say, it is not a formally recognized condition, but some documented cases do seem to have sprung from a particularly strict childhood. A father with a military background, for example, may find it hard to express his feelings, making the child feel no one is looking after him, which leads him to seek that kind of attention and nurturing from other people later in life. Guy, so you think Luke Ryder was suffering from this syndrome? Diana, I didn't say that. It's always very dangerous to offer a diagnosis without seeing the patient, but there are some characteristics you describe in him which I think could be suggestive. But others you've mentioned seem to diverge quite markedly from typical Peter Pan behavior. For example, from what you say, this man functioned perfectly adequately as an adult, at least after he began the relationship with your mother, so much so that her friends commented on his apparent maturity. Likewise, he had no problem making a long-term commitment to her, though, again, as you yourself pointed out, there could have been a significant element of self-interest at play here. It's also unusual for Peter Pans to go for women older or the same age as they are. They tend to target much younger women, in part to prove to themselves and others that they're still young. So Luke definitely did not fit that particular pattern. On the other hand, in some of these cases, the desire to be taken care of is so strong, it can lead men like this to gravitate towards older women, especially those with significant means or status. There's quite a famous case from the States where a prominent Nevada politician got involved with her husband's critical care nurse, who was about 10 years younger than her. Guy, what happened to her? Diana, I'm afraid she ended up dead. He killed her. But clearly we're not looking at anything like that here. Though it's interesting in that context to look not only at Luke, but at your mother's personality type too. Some psychologists believe that certain individuals, in this case mostly women, will actively seek out partners who will be reliant on them, partners they can mother. It won't surprise you to learn that this is known as Wendy syndrome, Really? I've heard of Peter Pan syndrome, but I've not heard of Wendy syndrome. That's interesting. It's often found as a codependency with the Peter Pan personality type. Do you think that could have been relevant in your own mother's case? Guy, shaking his head. My immediate response would be no. Luke was the exception, not the rule, in my mother's life. Both before and after Luke, she was in relationships with men considerably older than she was. Men who, for the most part, looked after her. Diana. Interesting. Guy. You said there were other aspects of Luke's behaviour that did appear to have followed the Peter Pan pattern. What sort of thing did you mean? Diana. The fact that he was easily bored, his lack of ambition, his reluctance to get a job. Guy. Though you could just put that down to laziness, because he didn't actually need to work. Diana. Absolutely. Which is why it's so perilous to draw conclusions from second-hand accounts. I believe you said Luke was extremely interested in physical fitness? Guy, with a wry smile. Yeah, he got Mum to put a gym in the basement. Diana. Which is also interesting because these Peter Pans are often obsessed with their looks and physique. Another way of proving that they are still young. In some extreme cases, these men even dress and behave like adolescents. There are examples from the US of people in their 30s taking on fake identities and allowing themselves to be taken into foster care. Really? That's so surprising. Or enrolling in a series of different high schools using fake adolescent personae. Basically, just about anything to avoid taking on the responsibility of adulthood. Guy. But didn't Luke do a version of exactly that? Living off the passport of someone much younger than him. Diana. Yes, but he didn't actively choose to do that, did he? He acquired that passport by a freak accident. That said, he saw no problem in becoming that much younger person when fate thrust it upon him. So I think the key question here is whether Luke was forced to play the role of a much younger man simply because that was the only passport available to him, or whether the passport merely allowed him to live in a way that he was already naturally drawn to. I'm not sure we'll ever know the real answer to that. Cut to studio. J.J. Norton. I guess it does at least explain all that stuff Caroline's friends told us about her saying Luke was an old soul. Alan Canning. Hang on a minute. We're getting way ahead of ourselves. How come the Met never discovered all this back in 2003? Bill Serafini shrugs. Maybe they just didn't look. To be fair, on the face of it, there was no reason to. As far as they were concerned, a man called Luke Ryder had entered the UK on a valid Australian passport. They wouldn't have raised any flags. Alan Canning. Oh, I get why they didn't find it. What I don't get is how you did. Bill Serafini. What does that mean? Alan Canning. You said yourself... I do this every time. I'm switching the accents. You said yourself there was no reason for anyone to doubt Luke Ryder wasn't exactly who you said he was. But you did. I just want to know why. Bill Serafini. Easy. He gives a wry smile when he realizes what he'd said. But you wanted to know how I worked it out. He turns to the array of pictures on the pinboard and taps the one with the group of surfers on the beach in Australia. It was this. Layla Furness. I'm still not with you. Bill Serafini. Take a closer look. She hesitates, then gets up and goes over to the board. Bill turns to the rest of the team. As Layla's about to discover, the real Luke Ryder had a tattoo on the back of his left shoulder. It's hard to make out exactly what it is, but my guess is a version of the Hokusei wave. It's pretty popular with surfers. Layla turns to the rest of them. He's right. Once you know what you're looking for, you see it straight away. J.J. Norton. Don't tell me. The Luke Ryder who married Caroline had no tattoos. Bill Serafini. You got it. He gestures to the body map that's been pinned on the board since the first episode. As confirmed by the autopsy, Eric Fulton, aka Luke Ryder, had no tattoos. Okay, pause. I want to make sure we write down his real name. So let's go over to our clue board and go back up to here. Real name, What was it again? Eric? Eric Fulton. Was really... How old was he? I'll just say in his 30s. Okay, we've got that. Let me know as we're going if there's anything you hear me say, because again, I'm processing this at a slower pace than you are. Anything you think deserves to be put on the clue board, write it in a comment. Because my goal is to solve this before everyone else does. That's my goal. I want us all to be smarter than the author thinks we are. Layla Furness. But you could have easily had one like that done if you wanted to pass himself off as Luke. J.J. Norton, shaking his head. He's already one step ahead. He didn't get one done because he didn't know he needed to. Mitchell Clark, nodding. Because they didn't know each other. He had no idea the real Luke Ryder had that ink. On his shoulder or anywhere else for that matter. Bill Serafini. Yup, it was just a random trick of fate that put the two of them on the same bus at exactly the wrong moment. They never met before. Hugo Fraser. So what do you think happened? This Eric Fulton stole the real Luke Ryder's passport? Bill Serafini. I think so. By all accounts, the real Luke was right next to the bomb when it went off. There wouldn't have been much of him left to identify. Are we missing something? I don't recall any of this. Did we skip something? Let me just... Hold on. Everybody pause. Just a second. I want to go back to the beginning of the episode. Because, yeah, we're on episode 3. I think we skipped something. Let's see. One moment. Man, these episodes are so long. Oh, we did skip. Okay, there's 2 episode 3s, which is very confusing. Let me see if we read a bit of episode 3 last time. We finished episode 2, and we ended with... Yes, we ended with the text message from the sisters. Yeah, we did totally skip. Sorry about that, guys. We were on episode 3, but there's 2 episode 3s, which is why I got confused. So let's rewind. Everybody remember what we've just read, but let's rewind a bit. Bye, Carrie. Thanks for hanging out. If you can come back, you're more than welcome. If not, no worries at all. Hope you've enjoyed so far, despite all of my fumbling through this thing. All right. Let's pause on what we do know from what we've just read and rewind a bit. 20 years ago, we've already read that part, the little refresh. Bill Serafini. So to update everyone, it's been 2 weeks since we last met and a lot of water under the bridge in that time. 1 or 2 of us have had a haircut for a start. Several of the team smile. Bill rubs his hand over the back of his head. And yes, that does include me. Anyway, we're back together now to debrief. To recap, we've been pursuing 3 lines of inquiry. Gestures to the whiteboard. 1, the man Caroline Howard, Ryder, may have been seeing... the man Caroline Howard, Ryder, may have been seeing at the time of the killing. 2, Luke's own past. And 3, whether Rupert Howard, Caroline's stepson, had any motive or opportunity to kill Luke. So, who wants to go first? J.J. Norton. Happy to do that, Bill. Bill takes his seat, and J.J. replaces him at the whiteboard. I was looking into Rupert Howard, and any reason he might have had to kill Luke. Oh, okay, we're looking into Rupert then. Good, because I still think he has more to say. So let's do this the old-fashioned way. He picks up the marker pen and starts writing. Some of the others exchange smiles. JJ loves his lists. Means. That's the easy one. Anyone who got access to that garden could have picked up a rock or a slab of pavement from the flower beds. All our potential perpetrators had the means. He put a tick against means. The board wobbles a little, and he moves it around until it's more stable. Opportunity. Rupert is fairly unique among the suspect cohort in that he didn't need anyone to let him in. He had his own key. So in that respect, he's right up there. The question, however, is whether he was actually in the vicinity at the time. He moves over to the pinboard and gestures at a map of England and Wales. London and Cambridge are both marked. Let's see if it will show you. Will it show? Nope. Nope, it will not. Rupert has always claimed that he was at his old college for a dinner that night. And as you can see from the map, we're talking about a distance of 60-odd miles. At least a couple of hours by car, not much less by train, if you factor in time it would take to travel across London to Dorney Place as well. That's just the time to get there. It'd be another 2 hours getting back. So given the murder took place between around 9:30 and 10:20, Rupert would have had to leave Cambridge at 8 at the absolute latest, which would have been right in the middle of the dinner. He wouldn't have got back to Cambridge till well after midnight. Turning to face the team. So was Rupert really in Cambridge that night? And if he was he there all night? The only way I was going to get answers to either of those questions was by talking to someone who was there. Thankfully, the college keeps pretty good records, and they put me on to Malcolm Severn, who was a friend at the contemporary of Rupert's, and now, conveniently, a professor at the same college. Cut to JJ, and a middle-aged man sitting in a Cambridge college hall. Paneled walls, period portraits, long tables with silver candlesticks. Severn, is that how you say his name? Severn, is heavily built, with thick white hair and a florid complexion. J.J. Norton. Thank you for meeting me, Professor Severn. Malcolm Severn. No problem at all. J.J. Norton. So do you remember the dinner on October 3rd, 2003? Malcolm Severn. I certainly do, not least because I was questioned by the Metropolitan Police about it very shortly afterwards. I and most of the rest of my year group. J.J. Norton. Oh, wait, is he not old? Sorry. I'm making him an old guy, but he might be a younger professor. Let me switch that up. Sorry about that. J.J. Norton. And do you remember Rupert being there at that night? Malcolm Severn. I do. We were actually sitting fairly close together. We were all part of the same group of friends. And hard as it might be to imagine, looking at us now, we were a pretty fast lot back then. Laughs. I remember the dean had to send a message from High Table asking us to pipe down. J.J. Norton. So there's no way Rupert could have absented himself without you knowing. Malcolm Severn. Certainly not for the time it would have taken for him to get to London and back. Hesitates. Though I do remember him leaving the table at one stage. J.J. Norton. Oh yes. When was that? Malcolm. They'd just started serving the entree, so it must have been around 8:30. He was only gone about half an hour. J.J. Norton. And when he got back, where did he say he'd been? Malcolm Severn, looking slightly flustered. He said he had to make a call. Something about a minor emergency and needing something sorted out. Re-DP. Wait a minute. 8:30. At 8:30. When was the mysterious phone call? Mysterious phone caller 2:37. Okay, so not the same. Not the same time. Okay. Just wanted to check. You can't be too careful about these things. I feel so bad that I was reading the wrong episode. I'm so sorry, everyone. We got a bit of a spoiler. And I was so confused. I'm like, I know I don't remember everything from the past episode, but I feel like I'm missing a lot of information. And I don't remember reading. Goodness gracious. We will make it through this episode, I promise. He said he had to make a call. Something about a minor emergency and needing something sorted out. Re-DP. J.J. Norton. DP? Malcolm. Dorney Place. He'd always called it that, ever since I first knew him. J.J. Norton.
I'm confused. He said it was an emergency, which implies something that suddenly happened. So how did he know about it? Had someone called or messaged him during the dinner to say there was a problem? Malcolm, I think he may have got a text. You weren't supposed to have mobile phones in hall, but Rupert never thought rules like that applied to him. J.J. Norton, so he left the dinner to make a call. Malcolm, which was a big thing, by the way. He got a severe ticking off for doing that. You're not supposed to leave until the master gives permission. J.J., and he never told you what the emergency was? Malcolm, no. J.J., wasn't that rather odd? Malcolm hesitates. I suppose so. I didn't think so at the time, but now you mention it, yes, it was a bit odd.
Cut to studio as before. JJ is still by the pinboard. Hugo Fraser.
Well, one thing we know is that whoever Rupert called that night, it wasn't the landline at Dorney Place. There's no record of any such incoming call, and nothing on Caroline's mobile either.
I just had a thought. Let me know what you guys think. This is all sorts of gross, but does anybody have a suspicion that maybe, I have no evidence to base this suspicion on, Rupert and Caroline may have something? I don't know. I don't know why that popped into my head, but they're not related. And he claims to not have liked her, but that could have been a really good cover for something else. I'm just going to leave that idea there. Let's continue. Especially since I have no evidence for it.
Hugo Fraser. Well, one thing we know is that whoever Rupert called that night, it wasn't the landline at Dorney Place. There's no record of any such incoming call, and nothing on Caroline's mobile either. Oh, so what? He didn't call Caroline. J.J. Norton. Though the timing is interesting, barely an hour after Rupert makes that mystery call, Luke is dead. Rather a coincidence, wouldn't you say? Who knows, he could have been setting a whole thing up. Lay the Furnace, skeptical. Oh, come on, you're not really suggesting Rupert put a hit on Luke. It's Camden Hill we're talking about, not the Costa Nostra. J.J. Norton, I agree, but it's still strange all the same. Bill Serafini, did you ask Rupert about it? J.J. Norton, giving him a dry look. I most certainly did.
Cut to interview with Rupert. He's at his flat this time. A leather armchair, piles of newspapers, a log burner. He's wearing a check shirt, a woolen waistcoat, and a knitted tie. J.J. Norton, off screen. The night Luke died, you were at a dinner in Cambridge, right? Rupert Howard, correct. What our Oxford counterparts would call a gaudy, rather condescendingly. That's a reunion dinner for my year. J.J. Norton, I do know what a gaudy is. One of your fellow alumni says you went out to make a call during dinner. Rupert, I don't really recall. You don't really recall, Rupert, really? J.J. Norton, this person also told us that you said there was an emergency re-DP that needed sorting out. Rupert Howard, frowning. I have no recollection of that. J.J. Norton, that's an odd form of words for him to use if it didn't happen. He says you always referred to home as DP. Rupert, dismissive. Look, Caroline was absolutely hopeless about the house. Things were always going wrong or needing to be fixed. Washing machines, plumbing, that sort of stuff. And the garden was in a complete state. J.J. Norton, and she called you when things like that went wrong, even though by all accounts you weren't that close. Rupert, eyes narrowing. On occasion. Guys, am I right? Do you think maybe Caroline and Rupert... Oh, I'm getting excited. J.J. Norton, you're a dab hand at plumbing, are you? Spot of decorating? DIY? Rupert gives a withering look in his direction, but says nothing. J.J. Norton, in any case, we know you didn't call her that particular evening. There were no calls from your mobile to hers that night, and none to the house either. We checked. Rupert, getting tetchy. I don't even remember making any call. J.J. Norton, your friend was pretty certain. Rupert, who is this friend? J.J. Norton, Malcolm Severn. Rupert, laughing out loud. My, 7 Bore?
He was always tagging along where he wasn't wanted. Jeez, I haven't spoken to him in years. J.J. Norton. His memory of that night seems pretty clear. You're sure you don't remember that call? I told you. Because Malcolm seems to think you were told off for leaving the hall during dinner without permission. That strikes me as something you wouldn't forget. Rupert. Like I said, J.J., and it is odd when you think about it. I'd have thought everything about that night would be etched in your mind. Rupert. Look, what are you getting at? J.J. Norton. I'm trying to get at the truth. Rupert. The police weren't interested in my phone calls at the time. J.J. Norton. Maybe they should have been. Rupert. Tearing off his mic and getting up. I've had enough of this. We're done. I'd like you to leave. Film cuts out to static. Ooh, he touched some sort of nerve. Oh, man. I'm telling you, I think Rupert, I'm not saying he did it, but I think he's shady, at the very least. My word. Cut to studio, as before. J.J. Norton. That's not exactly the demeanor of an innocent man, not in my book, but as at now, that's all we have on him. Layla Furness. Maybe DP didn't mean Dorney Place. He just used it as an excuse, a smokescreen. Hugo Fraser. He was only 23. Based on our little spoiler, we know that's not true, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. He was only 23. What does a kid that age need a smokescreen for? Oh no, that's Rupert they're talking about, just kidding. He was hardly some big-time crime boss. Layla Furness. No, but he could have been dabbling in drugs, something like that. Hugo Fraser, smiling. I get it. DP really stood for drug pusher. Layla Furness. Thanks for the man dissension, Hugo. But you know as well as I do that he could easily have been doing a bit of dealing on the side. It would account for why he's so touchy about it. Not just then, but especially now. It's hardly a good look for an aspiring Tory MP. Bill Serafini. For what it's worth, I agree, but either way, he does seem to have an alibi for that night. And to be honest, I still can't see what motive he could have had. That said, there may be something in the family finances that could have given him one. JJ, what did you find out about that? JJ Norton. Layla's the one who's been on the case there. Layla, looking up. Ah, yes. To recap, this was all about establishing whether Rupert had a reason to kill Luke, his one-time friend, let's not forget. Given we've now confirmed that Rupert was definitely in Cambridge that night, it could have been an argument gone bad murder. Someone else must have carried it out on his behalf. If not a professional hitman, then a friend or associate. In other words, it had to have been premeditated. So did Rupert have a motive that was strong enough for him to arrange to have Luke Ryder killed? The short answer is, I don't think so. I took a look at Andrew Howard's will. Cut to library footage of documents headed Last Will and Testament, etc. And Caroline did pretty well out of it. Not just the life interested in the house, but a rather handsome portfolio of cash and financial investments, which are hers to use during her lifetime. Whatever remains at the time of her death is to be divided equally among the 4 children, Rupert and Caroline's own 3, Mara, Amelie and Guy. The house, as we know, passes to Rupert on her death as Andrew Howard's eldest son. Bill Serafini. So Caroline's kids are relying on her not burning through that entire stack of cash, because if she does, they'll get nothing. Layla Furness. That was my reading of it too. Though, of course, I'm not a lawyer. Hugo Fraser. Well, I am, and I agree. The obvious next question being, what was the legal position at the point of Luke's murder? Layla Furness. That's where it gets in. Wrong accent. That's where it gets interesting. As far as I could make out, Caroline definitely was burning through the cash, and at a rate of knots. It looks like the value of the portfolio dropped by about 30% between Andrew's death in December 1999 and Luke's death in October 2003. Some of that was down to market fluctuations, but even so, she was clearly draining funds at quite a lick. Alan Canning. And you think that level of expenditure was down to Luke? Layla Furness. Not directly. He had no access to the money. so it was all in her name. But it seems she was spending both on him and with him. She bought him a Harley for a start, and they went on several expensive holidays. Alan Canning. So your theory is that Rupert might have had Luke killed to slow down her spending? Seems pretty tenuous to me. Mitchell Clark nodding. If he was going to all that trouble and take that big a risk, it would have been far more efficient to get rid of her. That way he'd cash out straight away and get the house. Layla Furness. Which is precisely why I think this one's basically a non-starter. The phone call at Cambridge is odd, and Rupert is way too defensive, but that could be down to something completely unconnected. And in any case, as Bill's already said, it makes no sense. Killing Luke wasn't going to solve Rupert's problems. In fact, it could even have made them worse. Caroline could have simply got married yet again, to someone even more unsuitable. Bill Serafini. Which brings us to the mystery man she may or may not have been having an affair with. Hugo, Alan, where did you get on that? Alan Canning. Well, I called in a few favors and got access to the DVLA database, pulling a sheet of paper from his file. There were just over 30,000 MGBs listed as still being on the road on October 2003. If you refine that down to just red models, then obviously it reduces fairly drastically, but you're still looking at several thousand. You could then refine it geographically, but we clearly have no way of knowing where this man was actually living. Mitchell Clark. Surely it's reasonable to assume surely it's a reasonable assumption he was in London. Layla Furness. I'd agree with that. Alan Canning, which is exactly what I was about to say, if you'd all allow me to finish. I agreed that someone Caroline was seeing regularly would probably have been living fairly close by, in London at least, or maybe the home counties. If you apply that filter to the DVLA list on top of the paint colour, you end up with just under 100 vehicles, 86 to be precise. Layla Furness. That's not too bad, actually fewer than I'd have expected. Alan Canning. If you then apply an age and gender filter on top of that and look only at male owners over 25, it comes down a bit more, to 42. He goes to the pinboard and puts up a map of Greater London with a scatter of red dots across it. This is where those 42 were. Bill Serafini. That's still a big task, and the data's 20 years old. Half those guys could be dead by now. Layla Furness agreeing. All have moved away. Alan Canning, turning to face them. Which is exactly what I'm finding. I started with those living closest to Dorney Place, on the assumption that Caroline's lover, if he did exist, was probably of a similar socio-economic class. And yes, I do know that may be a false assumption, Layla Furness in an undertone. Then again, I can't see Caroline going for a hackney plumber. Alan Canning, raising his voice slightly. As at now, I've spoken to 16 people who owned a red MGB at the time and lived in the same general area of London as Dorney Place. But thus far, there were no obvious hits. Bill Serafini. I guess it always was a bit of a Hail Mary. Hugo Fraser, turning to him. You know, I've never understood what Americans mean by that. Bill Serafini, grinning. Is a long pass right at the end of a football game. Basically, a latch-ditch long shot. Anyway, what have you been doing all this time while Alan's been racking up his phone bill? Hugo Fraser. I, my good sir, have been talking to Caroline's friends, those of them we could find, to see whether they might have a clue who Mr. X is. Or was. Bill Serafini. Now that sounds like a plan. So we're about at the 7 o'clock mark, and we're going to cut to Madeleine Downing in just a minute. So why don't we take a 5-minute break? Everybody grab a snack, grab something to drink. I'm going to down some coffee, and we will continue this episode in just a few minutes. We may go a little bit longer with this whole episode today because we had a bit of a false start. Accidentally jumped ahead. That's my fault. My goal is to finish this episode, but in the meantime, let's take a break and reconvene in 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Let's see where this mystery is going to take us next. So, where we left off, Hugo Fraser talked to Caroline's friends. As a reminder, we learned last episode that Caroline has, I think she has Alzheimer's, or something to the effect of where her memory's not great. And her testimony, as we've been fed to believe, is unreliable, which is probably why we haven't gotten an interview from her. But it doesn't mean you can't talk to her friends. So that's what Mr. Handsome Lawyer is about to do. Cut to Madeleine Downing, subcaptioned as before, friend of Caroline Howard, inner sitting room this time. Also, pause. If I've read anything that you think should go on the clue board, any little bits of information that doesn't make sense, or you think should be considered as a red flag, that kind of thing, let me know. Madeleine Downing, you're asking the wrong person. I never saw... Okay. Whew. I just checked my mic to make sure I was on. I have a complex about being muted now. You're asking the wrong person. I never saw the slightest suggestion she was having an affair. Laughs. Why would she need to with a young fit husband on tap? What was that thing Paul Newman said? Why go out for a burger when you can have steak at home? Cut to Jennifer Dennison, subcaptioned friend of Caroline Howard. Dark hair and a French plait. A patterned silk skirt. She's in a blue and white tiled kitchen with a view of a garden beyond. Jennifer Dennison. She never said anything to me, and I'm pretty sure she would have if something really was going on. Hugo Fraser, off screen. So she would have confided in you? You had that sort of relationship. Jennifer. I certainly confided in her, if that's what you mean. Flushes slightly. Look, if you must know, I was going through something like that myself back then, okay? I ended up leaving my husband, so I think she'd have said if she was in the same position. Hugo Fraser. Was she and Luke happy? As far as I know. She never said otherwise. Not to me, anyway. Cut to Carmel Piper, subcaptioned friend of Caroline Howard, a well-built woman with long ash blonde bob and a quilted leather gillet. She's at the table in a cafe. There's abstract art in pastel colors on the walls, fresh flowers on the table, and the coffee is in a blue cup with a saucer. It's clearly an independent, not one of the big chains. Carmel Piper. We weren't that close, to be honest. I was just one of her ladies who lunched. We'd get together every 6 weeks or so. It was just light-hearted stuff. Gossip, one-upmanship about holidays, that sort of thing. You know what it's like round here. All very harmless in the big scheme of things. Hugo Fraser. Did you ever see her get a call or text that might have suggested she had a lover? Carmel, laughing. I'm not sure how you could tell, but the answer is no. I never saw her rush off to answer her phone or suddenly say she had to be somewhere else, or anything like that. To be honest, I got the impression she kept her life pretty compartmentalized. A place for everyone and everyone in their place, if you know what I mean. Cut to studio, as before. Bill Serafini. What about the sports bag angle? Any better luck with that? Although it's another long shot, I know. Hugo Fraser. Afraid not. There were and still are any number of gyms in that part of town, not to mention the tennis courts at Queen's, and 3 squash clubs, to my certain knowledge. Alan Canning. I doubt many of them still have their records for 2003. I mean, yes, clearly we can ask, but even if the information still exists, they almost certainly won't give it to us. Mitchell Clark. Data protection, bane of my bloody life. Layla Furness. And this man may not have belonged to a club anyway. He could just have been, a jogger. Does anyone still jog these days? Is that still a thing? J.J. Norton, laughing. I think you have to run to be taken seriously now. Alan Canning, not laughing. So to summarize, based on Mara Howard's new evidence,
I tend to agree that Caroline Ryder did have some sort of extramarital relationship, but as at now, we don't have any live leads on who the man in question might have been.
Layla Furness. But you'll keep looking. At the cause, I mean.
Alan Canning, wearily. Yes, I can keep looking. Hugo Fraser. So all that leaves us with now is Bill and Mitch, and what they've managed to dig up about Luke. Mitchell Clark to Bill. You okay if I start? Bill Serafini. Knock yourself out. Mitch gets up and goes to the pinboard to the map of Australia. Mitchell Clark. So back to Calgary, which is clearly something Luke himself never planned on doing. I contacted the local primary school to see what records they had from back then, and to be honest, there wasn't much. No photos, sadly, but they do have a Facebook group of pupils, so the school posted something on that for me, and I got 4 or 5 messages back, and we did a group Zoom call. Cut to video of Mitch at his desk with 6 people on a Zoom screen. So you were all in the same class as Luke Ryder back in the day? Cut to close-up of Tracy Ryan, subcaptioned schoolmate of Luke Ryder, pretty, with red hair and a ponytail, and a striped top. She has Uluru as her screen background. Tracy. Oh yeah, I remember Luke. Right geeky little kid. Always getting sand kicked in his face. Not literally, of course, but you know what I mean. Cut to Scott Grant, subcaptioned as above. He's blonde but thinning on top. A Motorhead t-shirt and an earring. Scott Grant. You're right, that's exactly how I remember him. I could have knocked him, he could have knocked me down with a feather when it came out about him getting killed. I mean, him in London and all, to be honest. Never mind, married to some foxy older woman with a ton of cash. Laughs. Never thought he had it in him.
Also, I am purposefully not doing Australian accents because I physically cannot do it. I have tried. It goes British every time. So all of these friends, I am sure, have Australian accents. I am incapable of doing it. So sorry if you were wanting that. That is one service I cannot provide. Cut to Donna Gilchrist, subcaptioned as above, dark hair and a pixie cut. The sound of children in the background. Donna. Always struck me as a bit fishy, that whole thing, and they've never solved it, have they? Camera pans back to capture the whole group. Mitchell Clark. That's what we're trying to do now, but after all these years, it's not easy. Scott Grant. Which one was he? Oh, yeah. I don't envy you your job, mate. Tracy. So what do you need from us? I mean, I never saw the guy again after he left for Sydney. Mitchell Clark. And why do you think he left? Tracy. You're joking, right? I mean, his parents die, he inherits the cash. What else is he going to do? I'd have gone myself, given half a chance. Cut to studio, as before. Mitchell Clark. As you can see, I drew a pretty predictable blank there. So the next stop was Sydney. Unfortunately, the bar Luke worked in has long since gone, but thanks to an old friend of Layla's who now lives there, I did manage to track down the man who owned it back then. Cut to Mitch at his desk, this time on speakerphone. Mitchell Clark into phone. Hello, is this Don? Don Wyndham. Don Wyndham, that's right. Mitchell Clark. And you used to own the boardroom, is that right? The bar? Don. Sure did, mate. Owned it till I retired, 15 years ago now. Mitchell. And I'm guessing from the name that it was popular with the surfing crowd. Don laughs. Couldn't move for him, especially on a Friday night. Mitchell. And Luke Ryder worked for you. This would have been soon after he arrived in Sydney in 1994. Don. Young, easy. Absolutely. Worked for me a couple of years. Nice kid. Bit shy to start with, but he soon came out of his shell, especially once he got the surfing bug. And he got a serious case of it too. First the board, then the birds. Oh, sorry. Probably shouldn't have used that word, should I? Not these days. Me too and all that malarkey. Oh, my word. That's terrible. I just registered what that was. Mitchell Clark. I'm telling you, I try to filter out as much as I can. But sometimes my brain doesn't catch it. So he was popular with the girls. Don. Not to start with. Like I said, he was shy and a bit weedy, if I'm honest, but a bit on the small side.
And there was one heck of a lot of competition too with all the other lads, but once he bulked up a bit, it was all systems go. Through a year or so later, he met this one girl, and suddenly it was all about her. Didn't have eyes for anyone else. Mitchell, do you know her name? Don, nah, sorry, it's a long time ago. I reckon she was sweet on him though. You could tell the way they were together. It was soon after that he left. Mitchell, he left? Do you know why? Don, to be honest, it was all a bit of a mystery. One minute he's trying to find a place for him and this girl to move in together, and then all of a sudden he's handing in his notice and gone within the week. Mitchell, but he never gave you a reason. Don, no, he never said anything to me. He looked pretty bloody stressed about it though, whatever it was. Some of the other guys thought he got that girl up the duff and was looking for the escape hatch. Mitchell, do you think that's what happened? Don, search me. I do know she didn't go off with him though, because I saw her once or twice a couple of weeks after that. Looked right upset she did, poor little cow. But if you're about to ask me where Easy went off to, don't bother. I don't have a bloody clue. Mitchell, and when was this? Don, now you're asking. Summer 95, I think. Maybe late November? Mitchell, do you by any chance have any pictures of him back then? Don laughs. I doubt it, mate. It's 20 bloody years ago. But I'll have a shuffed around and see what I can find. Cut to studio, as before. Mitch is still by the pinboard. Mitchell Clark. Though, as it turned out, we were in luck. Don did find a couple of old snaps, but as you can see, gesturing to the board, they don't exactly tell us much. Camera zooms in on the photos. One shows a crowded bar, at least 15 people in shot, mostly young men. They're all holding up beer bottles and smiling. They look quite drunk. There's a circle drawn in red marker pen around a figure in the back row, but he's more than half obscured by the person in front. In the second picture, a bunch of young guys are running towards the waves carrying surfboards. The sun is only just coming up and slants low across the sand. Luke is again marked in red, but he's only visible from behind. Hugo Fraser. Oh, well, it was a good try. Mitchell Clark. Actually, I haven't quite finished. Don still had his tax record from the bar, so he was able to tell me exactly when it was Luke left. It was the 29th of November, 1995. So I did a web search for anything that happened in Sydney round then that might explain why he suddenly up and left. J.J. Norton. You don't buy that it was just about the girl? Mitchell. I don't know, maybe it was. But I thought it was worth checking out other possibilities as well, especially given that Don hadn't seen any evidence of a problem with his girlfriend. J.J. And? Mitchell. And I found something. Ooh, the plot thickens. He turns to the board and pins up a printout of 2 cuttings from the Sydney Press. I don't know if it'll show up for you. Maybe if I cover my face. Kind of, sort of. Oh, almost. I think it's because I have a light right here. It blows out the screen. I'll just read it to you. Road accident in Waverley leaves man in coma. Let me zoom in here. Can I zoom in? Yeah. Police were called to the scene of a serious road accident in Rosewood Road, Waverley, in the early hours of Saturday morning after a passing motorist called to report a young man lying unconscious in the middle of the road. The victim was immediately transferred to the emergency. It cuts off. He is not believed to have regained consciousness. Police are appealing for information from witnesses who saw or heard anything on Rosewood Road between 11:50 p.m. Friday and 1:30 a.m. Saturday to come forward. The police can be contacted on Crime Stoppers or at the Waverley Police Station in Bronte Road. Drunk driver sought in Sydney, hit and run. Inspector Field confirmed that the NSW police believed the incident was a hit and run. And it cuts off, but it says drinking. Sadly, we've seen too many instances of drunk drivers causing serious accidents, then fleeing the scene, she said. We urge the people concerned to come forward. And then it cuts off. The team exchanged glances. The level of energy in the room has definitely gone up. Mitch puts up a map of central Sydney, picks up the marker pen, and starts annotating the map. The boardroom bar was here. The address Dawn has on file for Luke at the same time was here, and the accident took place here. J.J. Norton nodding. So the accident was in a direct line between where he lived and where he worked. Mitchell Clark. Right. And 5 days after it happened, just as the police are turning up the heat, Luke resigns. Bill Serafini letting out a breath. Jeez. Mitchell Clark. And that sort of time in the morning is precisely when Luke would have been on his way home from work. And it's a fair bet he could have been drinking. J.J. Norton. Which, as that article says, would have given him a very good reason to not have stopped. Mitchell. Exactly. J.J. Did you speak to the city police? Mitchell. I did. They told me the driver responsible was never found, and there was nothing at the scene to help ID the vehicle. No paint fragments or anything like that. But one local resident did hear a very loud engine noise around that time. Alan Canning. Did the police ever suspect it could have been a motorbike? Mitchell. Apparently not. And it's not too late to follow up on that now. It's too late to follow up on that now, of course. And no way of tracking down the bike either, to see if it had any damage. J.J. Norton. That might not have been conclusive anyway. If it was just a glancing blow, the bike may have come off completely unscathed. Mitchell. So as at now, pause. In the US we say, so as of now, which is what my brain tries to read, but on here it says, so as at now, instead of so as of now, which is why I get tongue-tied every time I see it. So as at now, this avenue looks like a dead end, but even so, it may offer us one possible, and I think compelling, explanation for why Luke Ryder suddenly decided to leave the country. Hugo Fraser. And why someone might have wanted to kill him. One of the victim's relatives would be right up there as a potential suspect. Always assuming they knew where Luke had absconded to, of course. Alan Canning. Yes, but that wouldn't have been easy, and they'd have to be carrying one heck of a grudge to still be on his case 7 years later, on the opposite side of the world. J.J. Norton. What do we know about the victim? Mitchell. Sighs. Not much, I'm afraid. The police were a bit cagey about the whole thing. I got the impression the family put a lot of pressure on them to not release the man's name. There were personal reasons, apparently. Bill Serafini, knowingly. Someone who was where he wasn't supposed to be. J.J. Norton. That would be my guess, too. Maybe a married man caught going over the side? Hugo Fraser. Do we know what happened to him? Did he survive? Mitchell Clark. Right now, your guess is as good as mine, but I've started going through death records for the weeks after the accident to see if I can find anything, though we have no way of knowing whether any of this has anything to do with Luke Ryder, of course. Layla Furness. True, the hit and run might have been caused by someone else entirely. This could just be a total wild goose chase. Bill Serafini. Good work, though, Mitch. Very good work. JJ. Agreed. And it's also something the Met don't seem to have discovered at the time, so props for that. Alan Canning. Only if it turns out to be relevant. As Layla says, it could have absolutely nothing to do with it. Hugo Fraser, ignoring him. How do you top that, then, Bill? Bill Serafini, smiling and getting to his feet as Mitch sits down. I'll do my best, Hugo. I'll do my best. Turning to face them. So, while Mitch has been chasing Luke across the outback, I've been looking at where he pitched up next. Back in 2003, the UK police established that when he left Sydney, he went first to Bali, then to Cambodia. He pins up maps of both countries with markers on Kuta and Kampot, respectively. In both places he just did casual work, or at least as far as I can determine. If there were other untoward incidents, I haven't found them. Though in the light of what Mitch has just told us, the fact that he doesn't seem to have gone in for bar work in either location may be significant, along with the fact that he didn't stay long in either place. His next stop after Cambodia was Beirut. He picks up another map, where he arrived in January 1997. We don't know quite what he was doing there or why he chose it, but Lebanon was hardly the obvious choice for a holiday in the sun. The country was still recovering from a savage civil war. The government was weak to non-existent in some parts of the country, and there were areas where terrorist groups like Hezbollah and Hamas operated pretty much with impunity, as Luke was to find out. He turns and puts up a press cutting from the New York Times. Beirut bus bombs leaves 13 dead. Westerners are among casualties. White House condemns atrocious terrorist attack. Beirut, at just after 2 p.m. local time yesterday, the center of Lebanon's capital city was rocked by an explosion that shattered windows up to a mile away. Has yet claimed responsibility for what is one of the worst attacks in Beirut in recent memory. More than 30 people are being treated in hospital and 13 dead so far confirmed, including 3 Westerners. 1 American, ... gets cut off. Cut to CNN footage of the aftermath of the attack. Bodies lying in the street, the tangled wreckage of the bus, debris and broken glass strewn across the ground. Then a tracking shot in a crowded and chaotic hospital. People on makeshift beds, one missing a leg, several with bandages around their heads and faces. Layla Furness, clearly shocked. I remembered that happening. Just dreadful. And you're saying Ryder was mixed up in it? Bill Serafini nods. He was one of the injured. He had superficial cuts and a broken arm, spent 3 days in the Beirut hospital, and then, not surprisingly, decided to leave the country. The next time we catch up with him is in ASOS, where, 2 years later, he would meet Rupert Howard, and the last chapter of his life would start to play out. Not that he knew that then, of course. Hugo Fraser. Horrible thing to happen, of course. But I can see how Ryder being caught up in a bus bomb in Beirut could possibly lead to someone tracking him down and killing him in London. Oh, but I can't see how Ryder being caught up in a bus bomb in Beirut could possibly lead to someone tracking him down and killing him in London 6 years later. Mitch's lead, on the other hand. There's a general agreement and nodding of heads. Bill Serafini. Not so fast, folks. That wasn't the only thing I found out. He turns and puts up a photo on the pinboard. It's a well-built young man with dark blonde hair and a confident smile. Hugo Fraser. Who is that? Bill Serafini. It's Luke Ryder. People stare at one another, and then at Bill, clearly confused. Hugo Fraser. No, it's not. Bill Serafini. Yes, it is. This is the man who left Sydney in November in 1995 and was injured in a bus bombing in Beirut in August 1997. Only he wasn't injured that day. He was killed. The man we've been chasing, the man who met Rupert Howard in Greece, the man who married Caroline Howard and ended up beaten to death in her garden, that wasn't Luke Ryder. That was an imposter. Fade out. End credits. Wrap-up email from Nick Vincent, 5th of May, 2023. I'm so upset that we accidentally got the wrong chapter and started reading that because it totally spoiled that really cool cliffhanger. But now we know that Luke Ryder wasn't who he said he was. He somehow changed his identity for why we don't know and continued on the facade until he died. Wrap-up email from Nick Vincent, 5th of May, 2023. To Guy Howard, Hugo Fraser, Alan Canning, Mitch Clark, Layla Furness, Bill Serafini, J.J. Norton. The team. Cece Tarek Osman. Subject, Humdinger. I think we can all agree that this was one heck of a showstopper. Massive, massive creds to Bill for pulling that out of his hat and doing it with such a aplomb. And apologies again for insisting on stopping filming at that point. I know you all have tons of questions. I do too. But we need you to ask those on camera to keep the energy and momentum of the investigation. And you don't have long to wait. Next shoot day is the 16th, and Tarek will be getting in touch with logistics, etc. Cheers, Nick. From Alan Canning to Guy Howard. Subject, Bill. Guy. Could I just confirm whether or not you were privy to Bill's revelation before it happened? I'm frankly astonished that he's managed to make such an extraordinary discovery in the short time he's been on the case. They only started investigating Luke's past less than a month ago. Moreover, it's quite clear the Met had, and still have, no idea whatsoever about this alleged imposter. But maybe you and Nick have been sitting on this from the start. It would be good to know, if so. Best, Alan. From Guy Howard to Alan Canning. Subject, Bill. I had no idea. Text messages between Amelie and Mara Howard. 6th of May, 2023, 11:49 a.m. Let me see if I can figure out which person is saying which. I'll just take a guess. Because it doesn't say their names. It just says what's being said. Did you get my voicemail about Luke and him being a fake? Like, what? That's pretty much what I said. What did Guy say? Did he know? No, I'm sure he didn't. He looked like crap, by the way. Said Nick had gone behind his back. Yeah, well, what did he expect? I still can't believe that Luke had us fooled and got away with it. And what about Mum? Do you think she knew? To begin with, I thought there's no way she knew. And now? I don't know, Am. I just don't know. It might explain a lot of things. A lot of things. Oh. Voicemail left for Guy Howard by Nick Vincent, 6th of May, 2023, 11:05 p.m. Guy, it's me. Look, I know you're mad, and in your position I would be too, but I think once you've calmed down and had a chance to think about it, you'll see that it was absolutely the right thing to do for the show. That last freeze frame on your face was one of the best closing shots I've seen in I don't know how long. Pure telly gold, mate. Pure telly gold. Anyway, let's catch up on Monday. I've got the kids this weekend, so it's like the end of days around here. The end. And now we go to the next episode, which is where we started reading and gave ourselves a bit of a spoiler. But now we know Luke wasn't who he said he was. His identity was switched at some point. I won't reread what we originally read at the beginning, but from what I understand, passports were switched at some point. I don't think it says how, but Rupert was interviewed, remember, and he was shocked. I'm actually surprised he was shocked, because I thought for sure Rupert found it out. Even if he didn't say anything, I just feel like Rupert knows more than he's saying. And maybe that's correct, but about the wrong thing. Maybe I'm have a good hunch, but it's not about this. But things are definitely heating up as far as, well, really running out of suspects. So we can assume it wasn't Caroline. She's sort of been excused from the suspect list. Rupert, I feel like they've sort of dismissed him, and I don't like that. Because I still suspect him. I'm still suspicious. Mara and Amelie, they know more than they're saying. I'm sure of it. Their text messages back and forth. Also, how are people on this show getting those text messages? I would love to know. Or is it just us, the readers, who are privy to that? Or is the whole show privy to that? I'm curious to know that. But I feel like the girls, because Guy was so young, he was only 10, he probably wasn't aware of the drama that was happening in that house. But the girls, being older, were probably a lot more privy to that. Especially Mara. She's already claimed that she takes care of things. And she always has. She told Amelie that in a text message from last episode. Which makes me wonder, what sort of things has she taken care of? What sort of messes did the family get into on the sly, in secret, that Guy wasn't aware of, that maybe Luke even wasn't aware of? Maybe that mess caused someone to call Luke secretly for that 2-minute, 33-second conversation. Maybe it was about filling him in on the goss. You know, filling him in on maybe some blackmail? I don't know. Lots of questions, not a lot of answers. I am going to just, let's see, page 180. So let me just fast forward, slide through here to see how long this episode is. It's quite long. I feel like we probably, wow, it's very long. Okay, we're not going to get to the end of this episode, but we will next episode. So let me go back to 180. In fact, I'll probably just go to the beginning of the episode so that we can start from the beginning next time. And just give ourselves a little refresher of the spoiler that I spoiled for all of us. Ay. You know, I will say, streaming online, it's so much fun because there's a real-time connection when everybody's here at the same time, and I can talk to you and see what you're thinking, what you're up to for the day, you know, all that stuff. But there is something to be said about editing out your mistakes. And I will never do this, but I have seen some people vlog their day, vlogging like they normally would, but they do very light editing, if any editing at all. They just let everything stay in. And I was thinking, the amount of mistakes people would see me do. No, everyone would unsubscribe. Nobody would watch because it's just so bad. The amount of times I trip over my words, the amount of times I space out trying to think of what I'd like to say next. Yeah, editing is pretty powerful, and live streaming, there's a bit of a nerve-wracking element to it because you can't go back. Once you're live, it's there to stay. So, despite the rough start of me being muted and reading the wrong chapter for a few minutes, I hope you still had fun anyway. Next week, I will try to be more on my game, making sure my mic is on when I start the stream. And I've already got my Kindle set to the right chapter already. So we've got that figured out. Now, anybody watching after the fact, catching up on all of the drama, if there's anything that you feel like you want included on the clue board, any information that you think is relevant or suspicious or doesn't quite add up, leave it in a comment. Because like I said, I don't quite process the information, and I don't usually go back and reread what I've read. So yeah, if you guys wouldn't mind helping me brainstorm what needs to be added to the clue board, I'll give you another look-see here. What we've got so far. We've got our little whodunnit banner, which I'm in love with. We have Luke Ryder information here, which we could add some more information, you know, like, did we add? Yes, we added his real name is Eric Fulton. Switched identities. Wasn't Australian. I didn't spell that right at all. Anything else you think should be added to this? Comment it below. And any suspects you think should be added, let me know. Mara, I've got some suspicions about her. She's not saying, her and Amelie both are not sharing everything. Rupert, I know they've pretty much dismissed him, and his surprise did seem genuine in the little spoiler we read at the beginning. But beyond that, these two I'm still curious about what's going to be revealed next. And if there's anything I've missed as far as the timeline that you feel is important to know, add that in as well. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that we've learned so far. I'm having a blast with all of this. This is so much fun to me. I know that a lot of you can't make it live, and that's totally fine, but this is so much fun, and I'm so glad you were able to come, whether you were live or whether you were watching after the fact. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. For anybody who doesn't know, we do Murder Mystery Mondays every single Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on my YouTube channel, and we're going through the book Murder in the Family by Cara Hunter. If you'd like to grab the book yourself and follow along for next week, you're more than welcome. If you don't, that's totally fine. I read everything out loud and try to do accents to keep it interesting. I fumble a bit, but we do our best, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope this video started your week on the right foot. Thank you, all of you fellow Nancy Drews, for helping me out and helping me solve this 20-year-old cold case. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Love you guys. Mwah. Bye.